Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Today on the show, I interview painter Molly Maine. Molly Maine is originally from California, but now calls Paris, France home, where she spends her days painting beautiful imagery. I hope you guys enjoy the show. You're my neighbor, and I love anyone that lives in Montmartre, so thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's a really fun thing about Montmartre is you get to know your neighbors.
Exactly. People actually talk to each other in this neighborhood. I don't think the rest of Paris does much of that.
Yeah, it also helps having a dog is always good.
We've made so many friends through our dogs, and I'm pretty sure Coco is still in love with your dog. So that was his true love always. But I'm not focused on dogs today. I am focused on your work. You are a fine art painter. You're originally from California, and then you moved all over the world, it sounds like. So let's just jump in and talk a little bit about your Paris story. Like, what brought you here to begin with?
I was already living in the UK, and I had a partner at the time who had family in Paris, and they had an apartment. So it was kind of a little bit of just like a whimsical idea to move to Paris for a year. And I happened to find a studio when I was in Paris that taught figure drawing and painting from life. And it's something I'd always wanted to study, and I never had a real opportunity. So when I found out it was 800 meters from my apartment, I was thrilled.
Oh, wow, that's so nice. And was this in Montmartre? Were you living at this time?
It's in Montmartre. It's a studio called Studio Escalier, and they're a small school, but they teach both painting and drawing half the year in Paris and half the year in the countryside.
That sounds so lovely. And how perfect, like that you just ended up living right next to it.
Was very lucky, and the teachers are amazing. They really explain what you're looking at and how to understand like light and form. I think it's rare to find that. I highly recommend them.
Yeah. And so did you speak French at that time? Was all the classes in French?
No, they're two Americans. So all the classes are actually in English, although they do speak French. They have some French students. But I came here knowing a little bit of Italian, a little bit of Spanish, and absolutely no French.
That worked out perfect then.
Yeah,
I
it's
think a lot of
been
us do that. We come here just thinking, oh, we'll figure it out when we get there. I think a lot of people are intimidated by the French language, but I mean, how do you feel about it now that you've lived here for a while?
I think French is very hard to learn compared to Italian or Spanish,
Yeah.
but it's kind of an adventure, and I've been enjoying learning it. I did have to spend a lot of time. Sorry, I did
Okay, you
have
can
to.
pause for a minute and restart.
Yeah, I did have to really focus on studying French, but it's also kind of been a joy to learn.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I took 4 years of Spanish and it felt way easier than French, but also living here, like obviously you can make better connections, get more things done. I've known people that have lived here for years and years and still haven't learned French, and then I know people who are like perfectly fluent. So it just all depends on what works for you, but I feel like as an artist you can definitely connect to more people that way.
Yeah, and it's part of the culture for me. Going to the museums, learning about the art, you feel a little bit closer to it when you can read French, when you can speak to people in French about it. So it's been important to try to learn at least.
And how has Montmartre influenced your work? I mean, we're living in the artist district. There's literally people painting in the street every day here. Like, has your work changed or evolved from being here?
I I think so. I think Montmartre in particular, you feel the history of different artists who've lived in the neighborhood. I was surprised even going to the Rep show they had a map of artists all over Paris, and Repin lived on Rue de Pique, which is the street I live on, and I think Van Gogh lived on Rue de Pique,
Yeah.
and you see little parts of paintings all the time when you're walking around. In fact, I think it's the Musée Montmartre. It's a
Mhm.
tiny little museum. It has a really great um, collection, and part of what I love about it is they show pictures of where different paintings were painted.
I love that. That's like one of my favorite museums. It's so sweet. And like for $60 or euros, you can have like a year membership there. And like the garden is so nice too.
The garden and the cafe, and they have good shows. Every once in a while, you'll go and you'll see work by an artist like you never knew, but
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like a little hidden gem. And I like to pretend that it's my home and my garden. I'm like, I live here.
You don't need garden space. That's one thing in Montmartre. It's not enough.
Exactly. It's so sweet. And so when you first started painting, like how old were you? How did you first get involved in painting?
I started painting as a little kid. I always loved it. There's a joke in my family that my first painting was called Throw Up Bunny, and it was just very expressive. And so it got framed actually when I was little, and my mom, I think, has it still.
Oh, that's so cute. The first work of art, throw up bunny.
I kind of love that. But I was really lucky. My parents always were very encouraging. And like, I remember my dad brought home a ton of paper that he had extra paper from the office. And so I remember getting this huge stack of paper and just watercoloring and drawing. And then my parents also had an exchange student come from Japan when I was 4 or 5, and she made very good friends with our family. And she ended up coming back to study in the US and lived with us for 3 years. And she took art classes. And so this is my first introduction to someone learning art classically.
Mhm.
She took figure and still life, and I would sit at the table and watch her draw.
And just watching her kind of inspired you to think like, hey, I want to do something like that.
Yeah, she'd talk about what she was doing. She was really like a sister to me. We're still in contact.
Oh,
She
wow.
visited me in Paris a couple weeks ago, actually. And she's got kids now who are the age that she was when she first came to the US, which
Oh
is
my,
really beautiful.
that is beautiful. I love that you kept in contact too.
Yeah, it's a
And
nice relationship.
so you studied art and painting and things like that in New York, correct? Is that where your education started?
Yeah, so I went to university in New York. I went to a small school called Sarah Lawrence, and it's known for being very artsy.
Yeah, I've heard of it. It's a great school.
Yeah, I loved it. It was a really unique place, but it was fun because you met a lot of other artists doing different things, but also studying something like, you could be an artist studying social sciences or philosophy, and I found that really inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, being around all those different types of personalities and different artists, did you find yourself like changing your work or thinking of new ideas easier because there was so much creativity around you?
I think the thing I really value the most from being friends with other artists is that when you're working alone, it's very easy to get in your own head about your work and become very existential. Why am I doing this? My work is horrible. We can get in a very negative cycle.
Yeah,
And when you talk to other people, you realize you are not alone in this. Everyone trying to do something creative has to struggle with an inner critic.
yeah, definitely. We're always like so cruel to ourselves.
Yeah, and you realize this is very universal, and you can encourage each other, you remind each other that this is part of the creative thing, and also you can help each other get out of that cycle. You can say, well, this is what I do when I'm feeling like that, or look at this work, you're being too critical. It's very helpful to have people who struggle with the same things.
Now, you also studied in Italy as well, and you were making a copy of Botticelli's La Primavera. I mean, that's amazing. And you were in Florence, Italy. I mean, how was that living in Italy and painting and like just hanging out being a copyist? That's so fun.
It was amazing. I did a study abroad for Sarah Lawrence, and they used to have a program in Florence that was it was a tiny little school. It was all girls when I was there. And there was a printmaking art teacher called Svetlin Krashina, who I think he's still working today, but he really was the first teacher that encouraged me to work more from life and also to do copies, which is something I'd never done before. And when I came back to Paris and studied with Studio Escalier, we spent a lot of time copying from works at the Louvre. But, he assigned the work of go to the Uffizi and copy something. And he suggested maybe copy the hands from the Primavera. And this is just such an incredible thing because, most of the time you get to see a piece of art and you spend maybe 5 minutes with it at most. But to be able to sit and look at something over an extended period of time, to notice what the artist was doing in a sort of deeper way, that's really a gift. And you can even watch other people interact with the art, watch how other people are looking at it, and that's fun too.
Definitely. I mean, the copyists, we do another podcast with Claudine, and it's about the history of artists and people in Paris. And we talk a lot about the copyists in the Louvre. I mean, a lot of women and men would go there to copy the art. And like you said, you spend days and hours and even years, copying these paintings. And I mean, you had that experience in the Louvre yourself. What was that like standing there copying like famous works? Did people want to talk to you all the time? Did you find yourself more immersed in your work? What was it like being there?
Yeah, it's a fun experience. Sometimes you can really just zone in on the piece of work and you're in a quiet place and you really feel like you're having a dialogue with the artist. And I love shows like this. Actually, there are a couple I've seen, like there was Turner working at the Louvre, and recently at the Orangerie, I saw a copy that I believe Perth Morissette did of a Boucher painting.
Mhm.
And it was really interesting because I never saw this connection before between Rococo painting and the Impressionists. It never would have occurred to me. I saw this copy and I saw she's in dialogue with principles that the Rococo painters were using. She's in dialogue with their sense of color and movement. And then I looked at a Monet painting and I saw it as a continuation of this tradition too. So when you copy from other artists, you are actually like communicating something in time with them, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. You can like imprint what is in fashion now and mix it with what they were doing.
Yeah, you take a modern view, you look at their view of the world, and you kind of create something new. It's really interesting.
And when they take you to copy a painting, like do they tell you like make it exactly the same, or is the purpose to kind of add your own little thing to it?
I think you could do it either way. I think both would be valuable. Sometimes when you're copying, you notice also how artists make mistakes. They don't make everything anatomically correct. For instance, if you're doing figure drawing, people like there's mannerism, there's stylizing, there's classicizing, and that is the artist looking at the world and making a statement about it. And you have that option too.
And when you say classicizing, does that mean like making people a certain size based on their class?
No, so classicizing, I mean, in the sense like maybe simplifying the features so it doesn't really represent exactly the character of a particular person,
Mhm.
but it's more in the vein of what at the time was seen as beautiful, or like a lot of the Greek gods, for instance. You wouldn't say that looks like an exact person, but you would say, oh, that's like a Apollo type or an Athena type or a Venus type.
That's fascinating. And so while you were in Italy, that's when you really started to get interested in figurative painting, correct?
That's when I had the most exposure to it, and I began to realize that I wanted to learn more how to paint and draw from life.
And that for me is like one of the hardest things to paint. Like people can paint faces and bodies. I'm just so amazed by it because it seems so difficult. I mean, when you were first learning, did it feel more? I mean, what were you painting before you started figurative painting?
I actually started painting abstractly. I was interested in abstract painters and more contemporary painting, but it's for me, drawing from life was always going back to the first thing I was interested in as an artist, which is looking at the world and sort of observing it and then sort of translating what I see that's beautiful or interesting about it.
And is that the purpose of your work? What do you want to do with your work?
Oh, that's a good question. And I struggle with that sometimes. But I think my work is very influenced by poetry and narrative. So I'm not a writer, but I'm very influenced by novels and poets. And I think I want to do something similar. I want to create sort of a scene that has sort of a nostalgia to it or a feeling to it. And maybe like a narrative, but not necessarily only mine, but one that someone can sort of fill in.
That sounds really interesting. I like that. And I know so many artists combine mediums, and it sounds like you could combine your love of like poems and literature, even though you're not a writer, but you could find a way to mix that in with your own paintings.
My paintings are almost all titled from works of literature, especially poetry.
It's so beautiful. And so, what do you paint now? Do you paint from live models? Do you just bring things into your head? Like, how do you find inspiration for your work?
So my work kind of has two aspects. On the one hand, I do always like to work from life. So I've been doing a lot of still lifes in my studio. Recently, I have really nice light, which is such a treat. And I'm also wanting to start teaching. So I'm starting to draw at the Louvre with people to teach from sculpture. And then the other part of my work, especially during COVID when I couldn't have live models and I had to figure out how to work really on my own, I used photo references and I would create little scenes and narratives and then later use the photos as a guide, but try to not be sort of chained to the photography, to feel free to change things, to add things, to make it a little more, to change the color, but also add in different elements. So using them really as a reference. And this is why I think working from life has been important, because the more you work from life, the more I think you can see color very imaginatively. When you look at a flower, you really have to, even a white flower, when you look at it in the studio, it can be overwhelming how much color and how much variety there is in something as simple sounding as a white flower. And this, I always try to add in when I work from a photo. Um,
Add a touch in there. I love that. That's so beautiful. And the fact that you're teaching now too, I mean, that's another way to express yourself and help others. It's like, how do you get to teach at the Louvre? How do you get started doing that?
Oh, I'm just starting on my own. It's very like unofficial. I just am starting. I have one person who we're going to go and we're going to talk about sculpture and we're going to talk about drawing. So I have a Media Louvre card so we can go in. And I think the great thing about the Louvre is it has a tradition of being a teaching collection, and also anyone can go in there and draw. It's what the collection was originally for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a great thing. I think everyone should go in there, even if you're not an artist at all, just bring a pen and paper and sketch away.
And the moment you start to try to work from a sculpture or painting, sometimes it's very easy to look at things and kind of not realize the amount of skill and knowledge that goes into making them. And once you try,
Yeah,
you
that
can't help but have appreciation.
yeah, for sure. I mean, which do you find harder, copying or creating your own work?
Creating your own work, because it's very, I think there's a layer of emotional attachment that also comes into it. And that's hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And do you feel like making art is a form of therapy for you?
I feel like art is very important to who I am, but I feel the most creative and the most happy as an artist when my life is more stable and when I feel like I can have more discipline about when I work. And so for me, I actually find it hard to paint when I'm having a lot of chaos in my life,
Yeah.
because you're really alone with your own feelings and thoughts. Sort of like, I guess maybe meditation, you really have to learn how to not let external things keep you from keep you from painting, keep you from whatever, I think it's very easy to get derailed.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Like you need to find your center of focus so that you can, make your best work.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's the most difficult part of being an artist in Paris?
For me, the most difficult part actually has to do with what we just were talking about was it's isolation for me because I'm an immigrant and I do have a very strong community now, but especially during COVID, I noticed just because you can't walk out your door and just talk to anyone, there's always a language barrier, a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not living near my family. You really have to create your own community. And I think when you work alone a lot, this is even more important. And for me, that's the hardest part about being an artist is making sure you connect to enough other people, especially other artists, and that you share your work and you talk about strategies and you go to museums together. That's really important.
Yeah, because you could easily become like a hermit woman if you don't like force yourself to socialize.
You could.
That's the problem for a lot of like artists. A lot of them are introverted, and writers as well. They just want to be left alone. So you kind of have to force yourself to be social sometimes.
Yeah, and you learn so much about making art when you talk to other people and how they make art or what they're doing. And for me, I find that very inspiring. And I do think there are types of artists who work really well just in their own bubble. They don't need to go outside unless they have to eat. Like they're fine. Me, I need stimulation from other people. I need to go do things in the world. I need to go to museums. I need to even go to like music shows or things like this. It's important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm the same way. Like I need stimulation to be inspired. I can't just find it from within all the time. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are like that. We need stimulation. And why do you think creativity is important for society? Like, what is the purpose of creativity in the world today?
I actually am a huge fan of science. I'm kind of a nerd about it. And I think science is a field in particular where you see so much creativity, like problem solving, like we have all these problems like climate change, we had a pandemic. And I'm often really inspired by stories of scientists because I feel like they do something, it's not the same as artists exactly, but I feel like we have a similar approach to the world where we observe
Yeah.
and we try to solve problems or we try to make something that's going to help the world or like there's a creative component to this and you have to think outside the box to understand what's going on. And so one of my series of works actually is very inspired just by like Darwin and the way that he observed evolution. I think this is kind of an amazing story about the way that humans can look at the world around them and understand it. So I think creativity is essential, actually. It's going to solve, hopefully, it can help solve problems with climate change and disease and poverty, hopefully. We need
Yeah.
to think about it in a different way.
I think that's a very good point because I think that when you use the word like you're a creator or whatever, people automatically assume like, oh, you're a painter, you're a writer, you're whatever. But like you said, it can be a scientist. It can be anyone who's creating solutions.
Yeah, and also, this is another thing I think is important. I think finding meaning in the world, finding beauty in the world, is what keeps us going. We can get very stuck in everyday things, and having a little moment where life is just elevated is also important for our mental well being.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so true. I think a lot of people come to Paris for that reason. It's like their beauty's all around you, and we just want to be around beautiful things.
Yeah, it's nice when I love it when people come to visit me, and I always take them to museums because it's what I like to do, it's what I'm passionate about. And it's wonderful to see someone for the first time see a piece of work that moves them. I love this. It gives you new eyes.
Yeah, you get fresh eyes after seeing the same works over and over again.
Yeah.
And why do you think creatives are attracted to France and Paris in general?
I love how much the French value their artistic culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very special. I remember going to some of the night openings of museums and being just astounded how popular they were and how popular art shows can be. Some of the special exhibitions, you have to like get tickets in advance and it's almost competitive. And I really love this about French culture, that people care about seeing art. People like to talk about shows they've seen. People like to talk about books they've read. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think it's special here too, because a lot of times like art now can just be like something for like rich people. Like it's like, oh, they're collecting this, that, or the other. They want to talk about it because it's like they're part of their hierarchy or class or whatever. And in Paris or France in general, I don't really feel that way. It's not like a classist system of whether you could talk about art or enjoy art without being a snob.
Yeah, I think I don't really know because I'm not French and I'm sure it's not completely equal. But I love seeing groups of kids at the Louvre. I love that schools make the effort to bring kids in to look at work there.
Yeah, definitely. It's in their backyard.
Yeah.
And what advice do you have for people who are looking for their creative gifts? What would you say to them if they think they don't have anything, if they don't know what inspires them? What would you say to them?
I think the first thing to do when you're looking at a piece of art is always to say, well, what do I respond to? Do I like it? And I think that's an important thing also when you're trying to find your voice. What interests me? What am I excited by? And that's really a hard question to ask yourself, but I think it's the first one to just see what makes you interested, what captures your imagination. And then after that, I think it's also very important to learn how to, when you're making something, to learn how to just get into the mode of creating and to sort of silence a lot of criticism or self-doubt. I think being self-critical can really help you in the long run. You need to ask yourself important questions. You need to see what could be done better. But while you're being creative, I think it's really helpful just to enjoy or even suffer through. Sometimes it's suffering, but just to go through the process and try to experience it without the judgment.
Yeah, and get into that like flow state. Do you feel like you're like in flow states when you're painting?
On good days, yes, and those are the days you live for. But a lot of days you don't get quite there, and a lot of days it's not miserable or anything, but it's a struggle because as an artist and you really care about what you're doing and you want to do your best, and sometimes you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and there are days when it feels more like a struggle, but it makes those days where you have the flow even better.
Yeah, you appreciate it more.
Yeah.
And what are you most excited about for your future work? What are you working on right now?
So I'm still working on a series based on photos that I took during confinement. And it's all based on the place I was living, very small interior space, but using reflections from the window to sort of project images of the trees and lights coming into the space. So I'm hoping it creates a very dreamy atmosphere where you have life going on in a very contained space, but with elements of the outside coming in and elements of reflection because I use a mirror as well.
That sounds really cool.
Also working on still lives in my studio. I'm really hoping this year I can have a gallery opening somewhere in Paris. That would be my dream.
Yes, you could definitely do that. And do you take commissions as well?
Absolutely.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
where can people connect with you online, see your work, give you a commission?
So I have a website. It's margaretmaine.com. And I also have Instagram. It's Molly Maine Salk.
Very cool. Well, I can't wait to see what you'll do next and see your paintings in real life. I got to come over and check them out. And if you guys are in Paris, definitely reach out to Molly. Maybe she can take you to the Louvre and teach you some artistic things or just have some fun. And thank you so much for coming on the show, Molly.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. we have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.